and there was in British colonialism. Our secular historians and secularist progressives have a problem in calling Islamic colonialism as colonialism. But since they don't understand what really constitutes colonialism, they keep blabbering about it, and since they don't have a theory to explain what constitutes colonialism, so you need not take our progressive friends very seriously. So but in that sense, there are two colonialisms that have happened, and it has done some certain kind of damage. And I'm not interested in getting into the details of what kind of damage it is, but as a consequence, later came the growth of social sciences. Now what kind of an enterprise this growth of social science happened? See, imagine there are a set of people who came to India. Initially, there were missionaries who came, and then they came in the name of trade, and they became our masters. They saw India, and they experienced India, because they walked here, they spoke to people, they got married, they produced children here. They also did all sorts of things in India. They were good people, they were bad people, all sorts of people. They were committed people, they were cheaters. So, like any part of the world, those are also human beings who came here. They saw. But there is something interesting about this enterprise over 300, 400 years that they did here, is that they came and they saw and they understood our society, but they understood in a peculiar way which we can never comprehend. Because if you go back and look at the way in which they narrated our society, and look at what we do in every day. So there seemed to be no connection between the way in which I deal with my father, I deal with my temple, the way in which I do puja, and the way in which social scientists, Indologists describe my world. Now, the question of inquiry that we had been bothered about is to understand what makes European experience in India in a particularly different way. So there is a mistake that the common people and Hindu activists end up doing, it saying that we should discard because they were wrong descriptions. But there is a fundamental problem in claiming that they were wrong descriptions because they were true experiences of those people. But one of the other disadvantages of declaring them as wrong description is to give them a legitimacy to the description. Now see, imagine, for example, a schizophrenia, a paranoid patient. So I had a friend who was a schizophrenic and who used to take bath and in a bathroom. And always he used to have this complaint that, see, look, there is somebody watching me when I am taking bath. I mean, it was perplexing for us. We never understood what kind of an experience it is. See, we never saw anybody watching him in the bathroom, but it was true that he had that experience. There was an experience which is real to him because he was feeling it. In that sense, it is the experience of that schizophrenic to see that as an experience that someone is watching him. Imagine for a moment that Europeans came and saw India, and the experience of India for them is a schizophrenic experience. No, it is really, I'm not joking. This is precisely what Edward Said's formulation about European descriptions of India. In fact, for them, all of them, it exists in reality. Because they thought that is all. Because they came here, they searched for religion. They came here, they searched for sacred books. They came here, searched for belief systems, for example. They searched for doctrines in our country. What is a doctrine? We now, as a part of that larger academic endeavor, we talk about doctrine of Shankara, what doctrine we have. We don't even understand what the hell the doctrine is. We don't even have an idea of what religion is. We said India has a different kind of secularism. We don't even know what secularism is. Secularism is nothing but another phase of religious conversion. The second phase of proselytization is secularism. So we have no understanding of some of those terms for which they were trying to make sense of. Because it is like, I am a villager. I mean, I can tell you out of my own narration that I know I came from a very small village. And Bangalore was a too big a city for a villager like me who was in a absolutely Kannada milieu, and you have a very close circle. I come from an Orthodox Brahmin family, and you come and land in Bangalore. And your relatives, the kind of things they do was absolutely shocking. And you try to organize them. Oh, whether they do Sandhyavandana, they don't. Obviously, you don't see people doing Sandhyavandana in Bangalore city. When I was a young boy, and I was familiar evening and morning, people getting up, taking bath and doing Sandhyavandana, because that is my world. And I was trying to search for them, and I could not find them in Bangalore city. And so, I kept on searching for a long period in time. And this is precisely the kind of experience that Europeans had about India. Because they believed that there was religion, they believed that people act in this way, they believed that people had theology, they believed that There are belief systems, they believe that there are doctrines. Now, in that sense they came. So they thought that Indians had myth. Now for Europe, myth was centrally important because Europe, as Christian civilization, had history as opposed to the pagans with myth. Christians never had myth. It's only pagans who had myth. It's Greeks who had myth. No, we never had history because you see, we don't have a conception of history in us. Because history is not about the past, but it is the truthfulness of the past, the occurrence of the events of the past. Because if you go and talk what historiography really means, you would know it is not really about the past, but what is the truthful description of the past. See, we talk about Rama coming, Aurobindo comes and talks about Krishna in Jain. And Krishna was there, you don't know when. You don't care whether he existed or not. You see, when we talk about it, you talk about Krishna who is real. For us, real does not necessarily mean that this is a thing that exists. We make this distinction. So, in that sense, we are the people. We organized our actions in a completely different way. So, it is like, Europeans came and said Indians never had ethics. And we started showing there is Subhashita, there is all sorts of things. We started pulling out shlokas and say we do have ethics. What kind of ethics we built out of it? We made mockery of ourselves in that process. What kind of thing that we did? Because Europe had a particular kind of ethics called normative ethics. Because these are norms which gives you principles, and out of principles you make rules which are moral rules. So they are in the form of a structure ought to, ought not to. You can't even translate these words to any of the Indian languages. Forget about any of the Asian languages. So we never had this normativity that existed in our world, and we started describing normative ethics in our what are the examples? Satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, na bruyat, satyam bruyat. This we say as an example of it. In fact, there is nothing normative, nothing prescriptive about this statement. We don't even understand the fundamental structure, the way in which these disciplines and domains are organized. So in that sense, I am extremely fascinated by the kind of effort that Professor Vamsee is doing, because he recognizes this fact. He does not articulate it explicitly, though at times that social sciences that we talk about today, the whole garbage of political science, sociology and anthropology that you talk about are not science. They are part of a cultural experience which are driven by Christian theology. Now today they might be atheists, today they might not even remember. In fact, there is a crisis of secularization in Europe. Europe is undergoing a tremendous tension because of secularization process, because they have forgotten theology. They are in search of norms. They don't know where are they deriving norms. But if you want to really find norms, they have to go back to their biblical truths. And they projected that enlightenment is all about against religion, which is not. It is another version of describing religion. So there is enormous amount of work that has gone in. In that way, if you look at social sciences, there is nothing scientific about being secular. In fact, being secular is all about being Christian. And there is nothing scientific about talking about what are these democratic values. We have not reflected about it. We have not thought about it. So in that sense, Professor Vamsee's attempts to engage with these categories, which does not make any sense to our life. See, you go, you keep kumkum, and there are people who are doing Jnana in temple in Subrahmanya. So I asked many of the friends who are supporting that Jnana has to be private. I asked him why it should be. It is superstition. It is not secular. So I said, okay, let's take your logic and then apply it on keeping bindi. It's a common practice, all our sisters, wives, everybody does. So, but you don't even know why are you making such argument, because if you apply the criteria on Jnana, you would end up saying that keeping bindi on your forehead is also a superstitious act. It is not a secular act. It's a very vague articulation. This is like, okay, I felt I am an authority, I declare, and this is precisely what fathers do in church. And most of the social scientists, unknowingly, unconsciously, they are turned out to be the fathers of the church in the modern universities. So in that sense, you look at the news of a debate, you ask uncomfortable questions, they will be yelling at you. They are intolerant about you. You say anything against the doctrines and dogmas that they have survived on, they get really upset about it. So one of the fundamental questions for us is of two different levels. The one, as an academic endeavor, the questions the problems that Vamsee is trying to tackle about, that can we think of looking at how did a generation of people succumb to some of these ideas ignorantly. I mean, I can't say ignorantly what is in it my tradition which could not see. What kind of blindness my civilization could actually take. Why is that we took that blindness and how do we get out of it? So this heathen's blindness, as my Guru Balu says, so the blindness of our heathens had to be sort of worked out in a very rational means. And the second part, most of the Hindu activists, most of the people who are committed to the traditions, is that they are very polemical, they are very emotional. You don't read. For example, 90% of the people who supported a litigation against Wendy Doniger didn't have even read the book. Some of them haven't even seen the book. In fact, they didn't know why is that Delhi University was banning A.K. Ramanujan's essay. But they were part of the protest. So in that sense, there is an extraordinary amount of ignorance that gets generated in the common mass, not because that they are uninterested, because they feel that there is a danger, there is a threat that their culture is facing. But that is not enough for us to respond as a civilization because the danger is there. But half the argument, if most of my friends who are activists, they would be repeating the stories of the Christian missionaries that were told 200 years. But it is unfortunate that they don't know that they are repeating this 200-year-old garbage in the form of social reality that they experience. So in that sense, it's very important that the challenge that Professor Vamsee has posed us is not just an academic challenge. It is, if there is a survival and there is something that this civilization can offer to the world, if there is a value, I believe there is a value. It is not just a conviction. Some of the recent studies that have come in looking at Indian tradition have convinced me that there is an extraordinary value that the world is waiting to get from us. So in that sense, if you want to really make you sense of that, not just for, not in a very trivial third-rate sense of identity politics, but in the larger sense of as a knowledge it is worth to be shared, to be given, to be used by the whole of the civilization in the world, I think it is fundamentally necessary for us to be cognizant of the fact that we need to be intellectually rearmed. I mean, that's precisely my excitement that I share with Professor Vamsee. We might end up disagreeing, we might solve it, we may not solve it, but that's not the question. I mean, I might take one route and he might take another route. I mean, these are different issues. But the point is, this is the time where you can't keep quiet because, see, I have a son who is 6 years old. And now if I reconstruct my childhood, the kind of thing that were given to me as part of my tradition, I am unable to give it to my son. And imagine what would have happened to his son. I mean, we are going to kill the generations. We are going to break them away. We are going to cut them off from this tradition. So we have a choice, either to make our next generation, my son and your children, either to make them Christian or to keep them alive as part of their tradition. I think it is important that we take the challenge, and my answer to, and Professor Vamsee's answer to this challenge is that we wanted to keep our next generation as part of our tradition. And not just as a very submissive, subdued kind of a person because my grandfather was practicing it, I want to know. With a lot of pride, with a lot of value in it. I recognizing that I wanted to practice it. This is